your territory, for you. Can't let anybody get over on you. It's not unlike the thinking of my youth where I grew up. Of course, back in my youth, they didn't have drive-by shootings. Back then, the biggest threat was gang fight. Somebody might pull a knife or something like that, but there was never, nobody, I didn't think that people of the economic level of the place where I grew up, I don't think they could afford a gun. Anyway, but not in Deepak's youth. So there was a lot of this raw vengeance that these young men grew up with. And Deepak had a couple of situations where he went to jail, but he was on his way to becoming a very famous rap singer. He was already signed onto a label, making records and making money. But he still had these ties. People around him weren't exactly on the up and up, but they were all looking to try to get a piece of whatever action he was involved with. And one particular scene, he has this confrontation with these thugs that are there, saying that he did nothing for the hood. In all you're doing for yourself, but you're not doing anything for the hood, speaking about, you're not doing anything for the black people. And he rebelled against that. And then he put them down. He just told them what lowlifes they were, how useless they were. And they wound up, when Deepak was sentenced to go to jail for something, I forget what it was, but it wasn't a big crime. He was going to be there for a while, awaiting trial. So before he went off to serve his time, these thugs shot him in his vestibule. They shot him 5 times. And he lived through it. So after he got out of the hospital, he had to go into this prison setting where he would fulfill his time. And while he was there, all he could talk about was getting even with these thugs that shot him. And there, most of the people in that prison, it was a maximum security prison, they were all for him. They were all for him getting even. And one particular lifer, guy that was in for life, and probably 60 years old, pulled him aside and said something really interesting to him. You have a whole career waiting for you when you get out of here. You're going to be out of here in less than a year. You have a whole career waiting for you. You're famous. You can make money. You can have a life. So why are you yakking off about wanting to get even with these guys that shot you? Is your ignorance even greater than your hate? Don't you see? If you try to get back at those guys, you're going to wind up in here like me. I'm in here for life. I can't get out. Is that what you're thinking about? You got to put this in your head, son. If you try to get even with them, you're going to wind up in here for life. Do you get the equation on that? Do you get this? And he got it. He realized he's right. He has a whole career waiting for him. He wishes he's going to make big money, and he's going to have a life to live and be able to have things that most of the people that grew up with him will never have. And I thought about the whole concept of forgiveness. How even when I grew up, it did not exist. I grew up for the first part of my life until I was about 13. I lived with my mother, my brother, and my sister. And in that area, there was no forgiveness. Nobody thought about forgiveness because nobody thought about God. Whenever anybody used the word God, is usually in some kind of a swearing statement or phrase, but never any belief or the possibility of a belief. So it was just a struggle to survive day after day after day. But forgiveness was unheard of. Like my mother never used that word regarding us kids when we were getting at it with each other. Never anything like forgive or let go. Just, if you don't stop, I'm going to take the belt to your back. And whatever. It's like, that's the way we grew up. But with Dupac and growing up in the ghetto the way he did, I can understand why he had that attitude, where he came from. But for us now, I look at my life where I am. I have a huge advantage now because I can look back and I can actually see the generations of my growth in awareness. I can look back at the different people I hung out with. And when I left that, the next set of people I was hanging out with, and what they were thinking, and so on, so forth, all the way up to being in the ministry. But I say often enough, forgiveness is a complete yoga. All the different things that people do to try to get on the spiritual journey, it's good. I mean, all those different practices are good in their own way. But you really only need one. You need to get involved with understanding the complete yoga of forgiveness. It starts with most people who are not even involved on a spiritual journey, with the idea that if somebody does something that offends me, I have to be big enough in my own awareness to be able to forgive that person, not to make more out of it than actually happened. And so that's an idea about forgiveness. So it's a good thing that you can follow it that way, but once you're involved in using the yoga of forgiveness in your life, you're brought to teachers like, Tolle and Deepak Chopra and other teachers who are telling you the fact that this inner disturbance we have with conditions and circumstances that appear to be outside of us are mind-made ways of suffering for ourselves. In other words, you are allowing some inconsistency in life to cause you to hold negative emotions and images that are only working against your feeling good, feeling God. That's it. That's it. I mean, it's all of religion right there. If you're not feeling good at any given time in your life, you're not feeling joy, you don't have peace, it's because something's going on in your mind that is depriving you of being one with your true nature, which is one with God, if you will. But you don't have to use God, just use one with the source of life, or one with the consciousness divine. But you see that all of the suffering that people go through, 95% of it is mind-made, self-imposed suffering, and yet they don't know it. And so we look at Deepak, who grew up in a ghetto and had all the wrong ideas about life, and we look at his ignorance. How can anybody be so ignorant as to think you have a record career waiting for you in which you're going to make millions of dollars, and yet before you even get to that, you want to go and shoot a couple of these guys that shot you? Which is ignorance beyond ignorance. But we do that possibly in a smaller way. So when we have conditions and circumstances that are causing us negative emotions, we have to get beyond that limited forgiveness where we hold out the idea that if somebody does something offensive to me, I can be big enough to forgive. But then we get deeper into the idea of forgiveness and we see, if I release the inconsistencies of life that cause me to be upset, instead of looking at them and saying, oh God, why is this happening again? Well, what am I doing here? Oh, no, please. Oh, I can't hang out here. This is terrible. Whatever. What you are doing is you're allowing your mind to say, I'm not in agreement with this so totally that I'm willing to place myself in negative emotions. And I'm going to hold negative emotions about this until possibly I get off on somebody or yell at somebody or just become removed from the situation. But you see, it's not that which is going outside of you that is actually causing you to have those emotions. It's your unenlightened state of consciousness. And while that older gentleman in the prison looked at Deepak and said, how is your ignorance even greater than your hate? That's a great line. It's still ignorance. Because you're still not understanding that your suffering in that respect is self-imposed. You are willing to be at odds with life. And of course, Eckhart Tolle his entire work has to do with the whole idea of releasing. But listen to what unforgiveness is actually all about. I'll use Tolle from Stillness Speaks. Built into the very structure of the egoic self is a need to oppose, resist, and exclude to maintain the sense of separation on which its continued survival depends. So there is me against the other, us against them. The ego needs to be in conflict with something or someone. So you see, people talk about being born into the original sin. We were born into the original error of separation. The original idea and definition of life that I'm a separate body, mind, in a world of separate others. And I have to be really concerned about those situations and things that are trying to get over on me. Well, all of that is part of the illusion. It's part of the error in our thinking. So I'll read this to you again. The ego, he's saying the ego, and he says this quite often, the ego needs an enemy. In order for us to feel special on the limited level of thinking, we need to feel better than, smarter than, bigger than, stronger than, more intelligent than. And while we may not be voicing that, the fact is, that's the only way the people in the illusion-driven, limited thinking of the world feel okay. They only feel okay by comparison. In their own minds, I'm better off than him, I'm better off than her. Yeah, I've got more, I made more money than they did. Sure, good. See, you want life. Do you really want life? True life? It's yours for the taking if you're willing to really give your attention to the focus necessary to transcend the limited thinking you were born and raised in, educated in. And Eckhart Tolle is saying it to us in every passage he writes. Built into the very structure of the egoic self is a need to oppose, resist, and exclude to maintain the sense of separation on which its continued survival depends. So there is me against the other, us against them. The ego needs to be in conflict with something or someone. So when we talk about forgiveness, we have to think of it this way, because there are certain sections, even in the Bible, where it says if you forgive your tormentor or that which is offending you, if you don't forgive your brother or your sister who is doing something that you don't agree with, neither will your Father in heaven forgive you. But you see, that takes us into the situation of there being a middleman, somebody who's watching the situation in the world and is the referee or the judge. And I'll tell you how many, 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 many years ago, when my children were very young, we were taking these amazing hikes into these beautiful, pristine wilderness places. We as a family, went down into Chaco Canyon. This is probably 30 years ago, maybe more. And in beautiful Chaco Canyon, where they had many definitions of spiritual awakening by the native people that lived down there at one time, it was a beautiful place to visit and to see their little buildings. And they have a hogan, which is a round type of structure with a fairly high wall. I don't know if it ever had a roof on it, but there was this hogan there. And of course, they had signs on these things that you weren't supposed to go into them. And I think it was mainly because you would just have messed it up. It had already been there for, I don't know how many hundreds of years. But I was drawn to go into this hogan. Okay, now you can fault me for that. I wasn't completely enlightened at the time. It was only the day after that I was completely enlightened. But I went into this hogan. I climbed down into it with never any thought that I was going to desecrate it or smoke a cigarette down there or do anything. I went down there to meditate. And I got into the idea of the Lord's Prayer. This actually happened. I'm sitting in a meditation sitting with my back up against this wall in this hogan where many, 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 for hundreds of years, ceremonies took place there. And I said the Lord's Prayer, and as I was saying it within, not aloud, there was this sharp pause. I said, wait. Know what you're saying. And I was at the place in the prayer where I was saying, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And it said, in my mind, what need is there for there to be intercession in this prayer? Your debts are forgiven when you forgive the debts of others. That happens to be your only debt. What you are holding against others is your only debt. Why are you praying to someone outside yourself when all you have to do is release what you're holding against others and your debts are forgiven? That's the concept that came to me in that home. Really worth going in there to do that. It was such a wonderful insight into forgiveness. And it removed all of the illusionary ideas that go with feeling true to divine awareness within yourself. So, this particular passage from A Course in Miracles says it pretty well. You know, there was a time I took the Course in Miracles and I threw it up against the wall. This is way back, way back. Because it was so totally foreign to what I actually was attempting to do and understand. But look at the majesty of the writing in A Course in Miracles. Let's listen to this. This is found in A Course in Miracles, the old text, page 261, in paragraph 2. It's in the new edition, and most of you have the new edition. It's on page 281. Unless you are guiltless, you cannot know God. And they took all the cathedrals, sold off all the gold and silver and the accoutrements that go with the pompous attitudes found in major religions of the world. They took it all, they sold it off, and they gave it to Unity Church of Boulder. Unless you are guiltless, you cannot know God. And A Course in Miracles will not, written for 7 years, all that's been written in 3 huge books, will not ever once deviate from that truth. It goes on to say, whose will is it that you know him? In other words, unless you are guiltless, you cannot know God, whose will it is that you know him. Therefore, you must be guiltless. Yet, if you do not accept the necessary conditions for knowing him, knowing God, you have denied God and do not recognize God, though he is all around you. He cannot be known without his Son, whose guiltlessness is the condition for knowing him. Accepting his Son as guilty is a denial of the Father so complete that knowledge is swept away from recognition in the very mind where God himself has placed it. All right, I know, you can go to church on Sunday, spend an hour in there, meet your friends, have tea, coffee, donuts, and get some thoughts that you want to talk about. You can get into group circles and talk about spiritual awareness and everything. But are you ready to step into the most extraordinary awareness that life has to offer? And it's found in words like this. I'll read it again. Unless you are guiltless, you cannot know God, whose will it is that you know him. Therefore, you must be guiltless. Yet if you do not accept the necessary conditions for knowing him, you have denied him and do not recognize him, though God is all around you. He cannot be known without his Son, whose guiltlessness is the condition for knowing him. Accepting his Son as guilty is denial of the Father so complete that knowledge is swept away from the recognition in the very mind where God himself has placed it. That would be your mind, my mind. Because forgiveness on its highest level and the awakening to forgiveness, to the place where we ultimately arrive, where there is now no condemnation, no blame whatsoever for anyone or anything. Such a state of consciousness is the enlightened awareness of joy, peace, and love. So you follow forgiveness, but you follow it from the idea of still being a separate body-mind in a world that has its druthers. But at some point, as you continue to enter into contemplating the meaning of forgiveness, it carries you to a place where you are no longer going to involve your consciousness in blame of any kind. The fact of the matter is, when you look at someone who may seem to you to be worthy of blame, and you might say within yourself, oh, he should have known better, or they should have known better. If they knew better, they would have done better. They don't yet know better because they're sharing in the same ignorance that you possibly at one time shared in yourself. You shared in the illusion of separation so completely, you thought that you could embrace loveless thoughts and carry out loveless acts in a way, and they would have no effect on you. Every loveless thought is robbing you of the divine joy of being awake in the majesty and the sacredness of all life. Find it. Live it. It's the one and only miracle that pays off completely forever. But to find it, you've got to take to task your own awareness. You can't half-heartedly conduct a spiritual journey. You have to give the priority to peace, knowing when you truly have peace of mind, you are fulfilling your divine nature because you're holding no grievances. What? No grievances. Whenever a grievance arises within you, release it. Let it go. Choose peace again. Choose instead to forgive. Choose to bless, to silently bless and allow. That's why you came here to the world. That's why you're here. To find your way into your true relationship with your Creator, the living, present intelligence. And it requires the practice, a daily practice of the daily yoga, to take to task your awareness. So whenever you become conscious enough to be awake enough that when negative thoughts and negative emotions are starting to rise within you, you take a holy pause, you go deep inside and say, why am I holding this? Do I really want to feel this negative way? And then choose peace. Choose to bless instead, forgive, release, let it go. That is the will of God. So we're going to meditate together, which is something we should be doing on a regular basis. Taking time to be still and relax the incessant thinking of the mind that was born and raised in a desperate illusion of separation. Just relax the mind that is forever trying to gain advantages in an outer-directed, illusion-driven world. Because as you meditate and relax that thinking, that grasping, that fearing, you start to feel good. You will start to feel good. And when you feel good, you'll feel God. And the more you feel good, the more you'll be able to carry that with you so that you will choose to feel good instead of to blame, condemn, and leave it alone. So take a couple of deep breaths. As you release your breath, release whatever cares or concerns you may have brought with you. Just be willing to be sitting here, practicing the will of God. The will of God is that you should feel good. And you can help the mind to enter into this higher level of awareness by holding this mantra, this spiritual ideal. God is love. Love is life. I am God's life. I am. I am. God is love. Love is life. I am God's life. I am. I am. I am. God is love. Love is life. I am God's life. I am. Breathing in the I, breathing out the am.
In this refined level of awareness, we will offer the names of those that have been submitted to our prayer list. As Norma calls each name, just let love go to the name.
Faye Russell, Walter Verhagen, Robert Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia, Lucas Mache and family, IFAW Animal Charity, Elephants and Baby Elephants, Kate Beltrami and family, Steve Sheets, Sandy Spahn, Steve Taylor, Bill and Susan Pedrick, Tammy Maurer, Tanner Wilkie, Zoe and Ryan, Amy Howe, Zeke, Chris Howe, Anna Howe, Carl Parker, Megan Parker, Noel, Priyan Paschu, Rodney Howe, Ari Benson, Ami Benson, Serena Benson, Brent, Walter Woods, Sue H. and family, Iras and Petra, Sheila Gutman, Jim, Jessica, Erica, Arvi, Barb Sparkle, Sue Thorne, Skip Eckler, Louis Jordan, Dennis Kennewick, Kessie, Darcy, Susan Richardson, Nathan Noble, Diane Spahn, Dan Spahn, Pat Johnson, Cynthia Botkin, Sandy Spahn, Carol Selby, Diane Rendokoff, Maria Elwood, Sharon Elkin, Phyllis Norenjo, Daniel M. Norenjo, Leila Norenjo, Wilma Gomez, Esther Liss, Brooke, Lexi, Addie, Emily, Rachel, Ray, and Ryan, Kathy Crowell, Jasmine Nosman, Jackie Nosman. And you can call out the name if you feel like it to add to the list. And
Dear Matthew and family, S. Casey and family, S. Daniel and family, Susan Pergo, Sandra Pergo.
you see his healing light surrounding the prayer box and all the people's names that have been submitted throughout the month. We see them healed physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Let us take a moment now and enter the vision of the Masters, seeing this divine awareness rising in the consciousness of everyone, sharing this Boulder community with us. And this divine consciousness rising in the awareness of everyone sharing the state of Colorado with us. And moving in the minds, the hearts, the awareness of everyone, sharing these United States of America with us. And this divine healing consciousness, accepting the sacredness of all life, rising in the awareness of everyone, sharing this planet, everyone in every nation, in every culture, in every race, in every religion, rising to the awareness of the presence of the one intelligence, calling all as brothers and sisters to love one another. As we pray, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. And God is love. To this we say, Amen. We will take an offering for unity now. Those of you that are watching this on our website, you can go to the right-hand corner and hit that little tag there and show you the different ways you can donate to Unity of Boulder. And everyone here, we can just bring our gifts into our hands. And everyone that's tuning in on live stream, let us all bless these gifts with this offering prayer. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, because I give. And so it is. Amen.
The ocean refuses no river, no river. The ocean refuses no river. Ishkala mabulila, Ishkala. Ishkala mabulila, Ishkala. The ocean refuses no river. The ocean refuses no river.
I have an announcement to make. Many of you we'll bless this offering here. Join me now, please. We dedicate this tithe to the will and the work of the Spirit of truth, the Spirit available to each of us, the Spirit that joins all of us. We dedicate this tithe to the victory of the Spirit of truth. Amen. Don't construe what I'm about to say as a political statement, because it's not. Most of you that have been here for a while know Del, Norma, and my oldest son. He grew up here, was in the Sunday school, he worked the sound, he sang in the choir, sang on stage, and Many of you are aware of him as having his own podcast on television, The High Wire. But he is presently also the communications manager for the Robert Kennedy Jr. campaign for the presidency of the United States. He is speaking on Sunday in Aurora. I don't have the exact address. At 2 o'clock. He will be speaking for Kennedy. Kennedy will be in town to speak at a couple of events, but he will be speaking for Kennedy at 12:30, no, maybe 2:30 on Sunday. But if you show up on Sunday, I'll have the exact address and time at that point.
We have refreshments and the store is open. We have wonderful gift items and there are books about Unity and the way and the path that we've been on our whole life. And but the store has some of the greatest items you'd ever want to see. So please check that out and just go to your left. Our cry room right now, speaker is a disaster. I was in there for a second, and so I really hope we can get it fixed by Sunday, because I've never heard a speaker go like this, but it's gone so bad. It's like wigged out.
Okay.
So
All right.
I know I saw a couple with a child go in there. I was like, not going to happen, so let's just lock that door until we get it fixed.
We have tea and cookies for those of you who like to stay and chat for a while. Through these doors to your left into the bookstore. To everyone, have a beautiful night.